Hi, I'm Carl Pauls,
And I'm Gabe Ignetti.
and this is the Ecomodernist channel live. We're here to bring you information about the COP26 updates. So I've got a few stories here, and our wonderful guests, Gabe Ignetti, William Ikwatu, Alfred, and Kurt. So as we warm up for the COP26, issues like what energy sources should we use have started to come up again, and we're very happy to show you this. 10 European countries are now backing nuclear power in the green finance taxonomy. This is pretty important because it's going to set the parameters for investment in new energy development. Previously, companies like HSBC have no qualifications for nuclear products, and so when folks look to put their money where their mouth is, like we might, they simply have no option which provides nuclear electricity. So nuclear power must be part of the solution to the climate crisis and the rise in energy prices, according to a group of 10 EU countries led by France and Poland, who signed a joint opinion article published across major European newspapers on Monday, the 11th of October. Really great announcement. Bulgaria, Croatia, Czechia, Finland, France, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Very positive. Any comments from our peanut gallery?
I'm a little disappointed in Sweden,
Yeah.
but it's progress.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, should be happy that the Sweden's at least not saying anything. They're the only country that's banned nuclear power multiple times.
Yeah.
Finland.
Well, Finland has a long history of basically they were working with Russian nuclear, and I think they're one of the best examples of a country which took a perhaps less disciplined nuclear industry and reformed it very well, very successfully.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the flip side of that, Switzerland, what do they get? They get 50% of their total power from nuclear and they want to shut
Ooh, it's
everything
like
down.
40% now.
40% now?
Yeah,
Okay.
something like that. It's
They decide to shut off their nuclear power plants.
well, they haven't decided that. The Switzerland, oh, Switzerland, you mean? Sorry. I thought we were
Switzerland,
talking
yeah.
about, I thought we were still talking about Sweden. Yeah, Switzerland, it's about 40-ish percent. And yeah, they've announced a soft phase out, but they're not hard banning it the way Austria and Germany are.
Yeah.
The thing is, Switzerland is in a they're in a very choice position. They're one of the few countries in the world that can actually benefit from renewable power because being surrounded as they are by Germany, Italy, and France, France can provide them with infinite reliable energy from nuclear, and Switzerland itself has lots of hydro, which is very variable.
Yeah.
And Italy and Germany, this is the real key, are overproducing renewables and they need to get rid of it somewhere. So Switzerland serves to benefit by just being this dumping ground for free energy.
Mm.
The vast majority of the world cannot do that because renewables do not work in the way that's needed, but you do get these weird exceptions.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. It's only partially though, because you get nights, you get no wind.
Come to think of it, have you
Well,
guys
that's what their hydro and France's nuclear is for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
come to think
William.
of it, have you guys seen where I believe it was their Chamber of Commerce, Austria's Chamber of Commerce, is actually on record as to complaining about the greenhouse gas emissions requirements because if they are set too high, they actually help nuclear power more.
Yes.
That
No,
was a really good one.
That's a common thing. That's why there's a lot of opposition to carbon taxes, is because renewable power just can't do the job. If you tax carbon, then you need nuclear to replace the coal. There's just no two ways about it.
Yeah. I've heard that stated by actual, environmentalists at one time.
Oh, that was a good one with Austria clapping back at this and saying that, well, if you think that nuclear is clean, well, then we think that people who don't have nuclear don't have to have better emissions. It just didn't make sense. If you actually care about the data, it seems counterintuitive, but it is a policy decision. They're very, I guess, craven in that way. They're demanding room in policy in order to account for their distaste for nuclear.
And
as has always been the case.
Right.
It's really a shame. I hope public thinks that. I mean, the irony of it is that nuclear is the cleanest in every way. It is most energy
Well,
dense.
no, it's not the cleanest in the one way that matters, which is the special category that nuclear is judged in, and that's that it exists, and they hate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm talking about objectively, though.
No, I know what you're talking about. If you judge nuclear objectively or using any of the standards that any other energy source is judged by, it's the runaway winner. But we
Yes.
create a special category in public discourse where nuclear is judged all by itself, alone, without any characters, without any comparisons or characterizations. And in that category, nuclear is the loser because it was made to be.
Being
Yes.
so-called renewable.
Yes,
I gotta say it out loud for our audience. Yeah, Alfred's talking about nuclear doesn't qualify as renewable. It's the only low carbon energy source that doesn't qualify as renewable according to their standards, and it is also the lowest carbon if you include it in that category.
No, it's outright the lowest carbon. That's what the IPCC says.
Right, and there's even a great thread recently.
By the way,
on-
I have to correct you there very quickly, Carl. Renewable has nothing to do with low carbon. Renewable includes biomass, which is the highest carbon source.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's second only to coal.
Terrible.
Depends on how you measure
It-
the coal.
Yeah, it does depend, really.
And how you measure the biomass.
Yeah.
Modern coal is really efficient, and biomass gets a lot of pampering in how they calculate the statistics.
That seems to be changing, though. I mean, at least the public perception and all of that.
Not to
hopefully.
mention biomass is so ecologically destructive.
Yeah, no, biomass is terrible. I consider all renewables that way. They take up so much land and resources. Like the idea that anyone concerned about nature can be for renewables is just ridiculous.
Well, let's before we get off on trashing renewables, let's talk about the people
Well,
who
I'll
are
just log out then.
No. Well, let's talk about the real enemy, is those people who want to bring fossil fuels into our COP26 agreements. And that is this document leak of nations lobbying to change a climate report. And so a huge leak of documents seen by BBC News shows how many countries are trying to change a crucial scientific report on how to tackle climate change. The leak reveals Saudi Arabia, Japan, and Australia are among countries asking the UN to play down the need to move rapidly from fossil fuels. So these are some of the countries that either profit from fossil fuels, or countries that are having either policy restrictions or public opinion problems with their nuclear fleet. Australia's famously banned nuclear for several decades now. And Japan, of course, still is fighting with public opinion on reopening their nuclear plants versus importing LNG, coal, and oil.
They are moving, and they're starting to accelerate, but it's been a slow process.
Yeah. I have to wonder if the fact that Japanese got hit by 2 atomic bombs has anything to do with this whole problem that they had.
It's 90%.
No, it's not anywhere near 90, but it planted a hell of a big seed.
Yeah.
It's in Japan more than any other place. It's not considered silly to combine power and weapons, which is, of course, the root of all the absurd arguments against nuclear.
So continuing on with this, let's see what else is in here. So this is this is talking about adaptation, of course, because it's referring to 1.5 degrees. And the last report we had on 1.5 was the WG3, the Adaptation Report. And so that's not even going to be updated until well after COP26. So clues here and there as to the context for this report. And if you remember, that was special report on 1.5 degrees, which said we needed to increase nuclear by between 100 and 300%. And so these countries are actually lobbying for fossil fuels and against nuclear.
You know, there was just recently, I was perusing through the IPCC literature, you know, and what I found was the IPCC. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So what I found was interesting. They put more emphasis on carbon capture and storage than they do on nuclear. They have a whole section on that. And I didn't see any section on nuclear. It's like an afterthought. It's like
the IPCC is a massive government agency, and government agencies aren't allowed to publish documents that include curse words. And nuclear is a curse word. It really, the public discourse comes down to that. The advantages of nuclear are overwhelming. If you could simply talk about it openly without it being a curse word, we wouldn't talk about anything else. In fact, we wouldn't even have this discussion. It would be a settled argument.
Well, you know, the thing is, in the public mind, radiation is this otherworldly thing that's created by these scientists, you know, and as opposed to actually being something that is natural in the environment, because the whole Earth is an atomic furnace, you know. And,
well, it's the perfect example of self-perpetuating idiocy, because if you go deep into the LNT hypothesis, what you discover is that the nuclear safety industry, which is by far the largest part of the nuclear industry, actively opposes research into nuclear safety, because any serious research into nuclear safety will show that we're wasting our money on these people, and they don't want the checks to stop coming. But we've decided that they're the experts, and we don't talk to anyone else. So there's this self-affirming circle of bullshit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've run across that in the renewable versus nuclear Facebook group we once had. I think the guy left. He was a guy with a lot of degrees in nuclear, and he was involved in the nuclear industry in waste disposal and handling. And he was the most anti-nuclear guy you could talk about. He said just how it's just, you know, this monumentally intractable problem, and it's so, you know, insanely dangerous.
Well, there's a guy who lives near me named Jim. You've probably, I'm sure you've talked to him at some point. He's a nuclear engineer, and he spent 20 or 30 years designing the dry storage casks, the big cylinders behind the power plants. And he was telling me that, they would design one and it would pass all the tests, and then they would just throw away and design the next one. And they loved getting criticisms. They loved getting last minute design changes from the client. Everything that engineers and developers normally just hate and just get cold sweats about, the nuclear safety people love, because it's just one more thing they can bill for.
Yeah. You've got to keep the problem going to keep the money flowing.
Yeah.
It works for that's called regulatory capture, and it works for NGOs, it works for industry, it works for all sorts of people.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, those dry storage casks, they're just many sorts of impervious to defend against something that's not even that dangerous, and we're still coming up with new ways to reinforce them. It's so absurd.
Yeah, I just want to throw something in about the going back to the article, kind of that shouldn't be news to anyone if we paid attention to pictures from previous COPs. There's the people who were putting the COP on who are paying for it. I think, I can't remember if it was the last one or two COPs ago. It was like Toyota was the largest sponsor. And I can't remember if it was Exxon or British Petroleum, but one of the major oil companies was right up there with them. So you saw that signage the most throughout all the COP, with lots
Yep.
of green lighting next to them, or printed on green colored paper, green colored ink, whatever they did. But but yeah, it's being, the COP itself, the meeting, is in large part sponsored by companies with strong ties to fossil fuels, and that's why natural gas is the darling majority of the time backup for renewables that are there often enough for us to just talk about how much we like them, but they don't actually run our society directly.
Well, to bring this back to my favorite topic very briefly is, you mentioned that this is a bunch of countries fighting for fossil fuels, but I don't see any distinction between fossil fuels and renewables. It's always the renewable people who are fighting for natural gas because they need the backup. And by the same token, they're not displacing coal, which is their big claim. They're not doing anything. They're not doing anything for transport. Like there's just no, these countries that are proposing, less vilification of fossil fuels, that's just another way of phrasing more renewables. Like it's the same category.
Well, I'd say this. I mean, hopefully they are reducing the amount of natural gas where it already exists and is grandfathered in.
No, everywhere gas is going up.
We can cross our fingers. Yeah, right now gas is going up primarily because of fuel switching, and it may be a foregone conclusion that adding renewables to the grid will actually reduce our CO2. That's some people's hope, and I am, I'm a little more on their side than Alfred. I mean, Alfred, we love you. You're speaking very strongly, and I can appreciate your position. It has not shown a net reduction in CO2 yet. It's all come from fuel switching.
It may reduce. Here's the thing. We need to actually make a distinction here between firm renewables and variable intermittents. Firm renewables are basically the geothermal and the large-scale hydro. And then you've got the wind and solar, which are the variable intermittents. They're basically uncontrollable, weather dependent. The only ones that have actually proven their ability to eliminate fossil at scale have been geothermal and hydro.
And of course, nuclear.
Well, yeah, but
which is not renewable.
We're kind of segregating this away and to keep nuclear out of the equation for the moment, because some of these pair up very well with nuclear, whereas others don't. For instance, there is a case to be made that geothermal pairs extremely well with nuclear. We know that large-scale hydro pairs extremely well with nuclear. The only countries that have managed to actually reduce their greenhouse gas emissions on their electrical grids consistently to below 100 grams per kilowatt hour have been countries with majority nuclear, majority hydro, majority geothermal, or a combination thereof.
Let me ask you something. How does the economics of geothermal work if you have a country like Iceland or a state like Hawaii? Does that work out good?
Oh, those are fantastic places. Like Iceland.
I know they are, but I mean, how is it comparable to other power sources in terms of the cost?
Geothermal is reasonably cheap, but like not enough to really write home about.
Yeah, it's somewhat competitive, but it's
very competitive, but it's not going to like overwhelm the market.
Yeah,
in those
for
places,
electrical generation purposes, it's site dependent. If you're talking about something like district heating, it's a different story. But you need higher energy heat flows to really make it work for electrical generation.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to tell you something. This is not just a scientific question, it's a political question. And like, if you're coming up with a climate plan in the United States, it's very hard politically to leave out renewables. So
Because people are misinformed.
because yes, absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's like I'm not religious at all. I mean, I'm secular. There's no, you know, there's no basis for religion other than if you believe it. You know, but in politics, you can't be that secular as to deny religion either. You know, you can't be bad mouthing it. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Gabe, do us
Oh, yes,
do
you
us
can.
a favor and actually look towards the microphone. You may have to readjust your body, but you keep turning away, and
Oh,
and you can
okay.
hear that with me when I turn away and I speak.
Yeah, you're
It's a
fading.
significant drop off.
Ah, yes. Okay,
Yeah, the
I learned
radio
something.
voice is right there in the microphone.
Yeah, so I got to look straight ahead when I Okay. Well, these are the little bugs we're working out here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Okay.
So I did bring up Lazard's geothermal ranges from 59 to 101 compared to depreciated nuclear down there at 29. That's our legacy plants, the ones that we need to keep going, and so that combined cycle gas at $1 less per megawatt. Well, that really affects the bottom line when they can bid nuclear off the grid. We need just a few dollars. And that's what we saw in Illinois. $3 per megawatt hour kept Byron and Dresden online. And so the Lazard in this case doesn't lie. Nuclear as a baseload technology, if it's already fully depreciated, it's very cheap.
I have to disagree with the idea that Lazard doesn't lie. There are a few more hilarious. There are a few more hilarious graphs in the world than
well, I
this.
tried to be precise
they're not
there.
lying.
I said in this case, they're pretty much right.
Yeah, let me say one
It
thing
also,
about this. Yeah.
go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah. Well, they're not lying for one reason. The purpose of Lazard, as far as I can understand, is for lending money. So
Right.
they go out 30 years, right?
Not even 25.
25 years. Now that's the length of how long that you could get money for your nuclear plant or your solar farm or whatever. So they're only dealing with that parameter, whereas nuclear is not in that parameter.
Which is all the more reason why it has really nothing to do with the serious energy debate.
Yes.
How
Yes.
these numbers are calculated is they take the highest and lowest producing plant and they don't look at the overall average. $29 megawatt is pretty high for nuclear power plant productions. Most plants in the world are producing at less than that. The ones in Texas are producing at under $20. And remember, most of that cost is because we make it expensive. The potential price savings for nuclear are massive, and Lazard encourages people to ignore that.
Well, like I said,
It goes
it's not
further
focused
than
on
that. It goes a bit further than that. Lazard's entire modus operandi is basically to be an investment guide.
Which brings me back to my first point. Why are we using this in energy discussions if it's about investing?
Yeah, precisely.
Because no one reads the disclaimer. Because there's this giant disclaimer right here. It says other factors would also have potentially significant effect on the results contained herein, but have not been examined. Capacity value versus energy value, network upgrades, transmission, congestion, other integration-related costs.
Now let's scroll down to the chart again and point out a couple other things. Notice rooftop PV, and in particular rooftop residential, is the most expensive thing on this chart. Every renewable person, in the same breath that they say that they have the cheapest energy source, says they want to use a large percentage of rooftop PV. This is a direct contradiction, according to their own favorite source, which is Lazard.
It's all
Which
about
is-
gaming the system.
And that doesn't even take into account system costs, which again, rooftop solar PV, this is just levelized cost wholesale. This isn't the cost you actually pay, which is even higher.
Right.
Okay. And then gas peaking, which is their primary backup. That's the second most expensive thing on the chart. And gas combined cycle, future gas combined cycle is mostly more expensive than existing nuclear, and that's their base load. So across the board, this chart, this favorite source of renewable energy wisdom, paints a damning picture for renewable energy. But nobody stops to read it. We just accept renewable energy as this, self-affirming blessing to humanity, and it's not. And it's all because they present it with such incredible confidence. Pro-nuclear
this-
people,
Like I said,
pro-nuclear
it's
people need to talk with that same confidence.
Right.
It's an investment guide. Basically, Lazard is basically all about how quickly you can make back your capital investment. That's basically all this says.
And that's
I
important.
Like, how
realize
little
that.
money can you shell out in the short term, and how quickly can you make it back?
I
Yeah.
realize that, and it's true that nuclear has iffy short-term paybacks for a lot of reasons that again we just invent.
Oh, that's not inventing. That's just I think that's factual. I mean-
No, we've it's everything with nuclear is regulatory, but all
Maybe.
this discussion about investment does is kick the can one step down the road, because you can invest in wind and solar all day long and they're still not going to power civilization. Okay, you can invest in geothermal all day long and it's not going to invent new places where you can put geothermal. Okay, there are fundamental limits to these technologies. We need to talk about what's actually an option before we talk about what's a good investment strategy.
Right. Because we need to decarbonize. We're not going to save all our money and spend it on a dead planet. That's
And let's and even if and I got to stay inside the paradigm. I'm a firm believer that renewable energy is fractally wrong. Okay, every single part of it in every level of magnification, taken on its own, in the way the renewable energy people think is correct, can prove it's wrong if you just analyze it for a minute. This Lazard investment strategy, all of those investments are assumed to be in a vacuum, but that's not how finances work. And this is something that we're seeing in California right now. California has drastically overbuilt its solar, but because of the way solar works, all of that solar is generated at the same time, and that's driving down the market price. So every time you throw another utility scale solar plant on the grid, you bring down all of their values, and that absolutely facocks your investment.
Not to
potential.
mention it fiscally stresses all the firm generation sources.
Yes, and makes the grid more fragile, which increases the cost to the end user. That's what's really sad about how misinformed people are in this debate. Is average Joes on the street point to that graph that has nothing to do with them and is of dubious nature even on its own, and think that it shows that their bill's going to go down, when it explicitly shows the opposite.
right.
So,
So-
I wanted to make
That's
a
not
couple.
necessarily completely true, because what happens is that the people who can afford to get, for instance, their entire house on solar, including the batteries, they'll enjoy the pricing. For
Those
instance,
people are the ultra rich.
not even the ultra rich, just the rich. You can be in the millionaire class and have a house out here in Weston in South Florida, right? And have the entire thing run on solar. But all you're doing is, okay, you might have free electricity, but you just shifted your part of the burden of all the other generation sources onto your neighbors.
No, you're okay. So you've made at least two mistakes there. First of all, that's a minuscule number of people that again shows renewables are not the way forward. But you mentioned about shifting the burden onto your neighbors. If you're grid connected, you're not 100% solar, even with batteries.
That's
The
true.
only reason that option exists is because regulations demand that it exists. Okay, no one who runs power grids thinks that that's a good idea. And the only reason that that is cheaper is because regulations explicitly say that you get a payback, even though you shouldn't. That's where the cost shifting to the neighbors comes from.
Right.
Now,
They're-
if
they're
you
gonna-
go the if you now the second part of that, which is what I thought you were talking about at first, is if you go the extra step and actually clip your cord and make your home into a microgrid, which is theoretically possible in a few exceptional cases, and you have your solar and your batteries and you are your own destiny, that cuts you off from all of the government subsidies. And at that point, your own isolated solar system becomes 100 times more expensive than just paying the power company.
But on top of that, part of the reason why I was saying you're shifting the burden, though, is by if you do manage to cut your cord completely, then basically the pool of capital from which the utility provider can draw shrinks. Okay. So basically, in order to maintain a certain amount of generation capacity, the prices to all your neighbors who are still grid connected is going to
No,
And
it shrinks by a very tiny amount. Remember, all houses are only 5% of the electricity. Like you
True. This is
cutting
true.
your cord, the power company doesn't care about residences. It's only backfeeding solar that screws them over. Okay, if you truly are cutting your cord, the power company will do that for you with their blessing. Like they don't care. It's the net metering.
Not in Florida.
Yeah.
You're
So,
not allowed to do that in
let me
Florida.
wrap this up. Basically, what Alfred's talking about is really important. Net metering is if I have a solar panel, I'm going to ask you to pay me at noon for the energy that I use at 6 p.m. And those are two completely different things. Kurt, you had something you wanted to butt in with. Any thoughts
Well, I was
still in
just
your...
going to say that it seems like there's a couple of current events that shed some light on this decades debate about whether different energy sources can coexist, all of the above, or whether there's some prioritization that's going to have to happen. So one is the spike of the energy in Europe that didn't quickly got UK and France to reverse their positions they've been taking. And I think, we're having a fragilization of the grid and people are dying both in winter and summer events because the grid's getting fragilized. Eventually there's going to be a backlash on that. It hasn't happened yet here in the US, but I think we'll see that. The other thing is the reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill. Okay, now nobody's coexisting. The pro-nuclear, the resilient energy, that's in the infrastructure bill. And in the reconciliation bill, they've got the unicorns for Uber investments in intermittent energy sources that are going to destabilize and fragilize the grid more. And so people have to make a choice. They're going to go one way or the other, and that's just the politics right now. Now that doesn't prove we won't eventually have a compromise, but the way things are going, it looks like it's people are getting pushed to where they have to choose. Anyway, we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, I think that the politics can be taken out of it. That what Biden needs to do is to really set up a gold medal commission on energy and come up with a plan on how to decarbonize given the existing grid that we have, which would mean also, I mean, not just nuclear, but how do you deal with the solar and wind capacity that you have already? What do you do with that excess capacity? Is there, because there are options. I mean, you can perhaps even have these, they have the technology now, even though it's primitive, that will decarbonize, actually take carbon out of the air, take CO2 out of the air. And I know it's, if it's not something that's developed, but look, if you need to get rid of that excess energy, if you built those machines and used it for that purpose, instead of overburdening grids, I mean, that could be a good thing. And perhaps in the development of these machines and production, they could get an acceleration of the development of that technology. But this, right now, it's just political. I mean, it's just political what they're doing right now.
So speaking of that, of the climate bill, we caught Amazon, Disney, Apple, Microsoft supporting groups that are fighting this climate legislation. So some of America's most prominent companies, including Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Disney, are backing business groups that are fighting landmark climate legislation. They've mobilized to oppose the proposed $3.5 trillion budget bill put forward by Democrats, which contains unprecedented measures to drive down planet heating gases. The reconciliation bill has been called the most significant climate action in our country's history by Chuck Schumer. I'm looking for so who did they fund? It was either support or actively steer very lobbying groups that are attempting to sink the bill that carries the weight of Joe Biden's ambitions. So what are the names of these groups? I'm trying to dig through this and get to the bottom of it.
Well, fossil fuel companies, I would imagine.
U.S. Chamber of Commerce
Business
has voted to do everything we can to prevent this tax-raising, job-killing reconciliation bill. So there it is. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America.
Oh, wait, go back up for a sec. Go back up a touch. Down at the bottom of that paragraph, you've got other members include Andy Jassy, Chief Executive of Amazon,
Google,
Google, Alphabet, Darren Woods, Chief Executive of Exxon.
There we are.
Oy.
So
Follow
this,
the money.
the big pharma, what are they doing? Has run adverts attacking the proposed bill. The Rate Coalition, a lobby group that has Disney, FedEx, and Verizon as members. The National Association of Manufacturers, backed by Johnson & Johnson, Dow, and Goodyear, has said it is attempting to upend the bill in every way you can imagine. So really, the narrative from this article, at least, is that it's big business against the climate. Yeah. So what do we think of that?
Well, I think that they might be concerned about, and I'm no friend of theirs, but I think they may be concerned about the price of electricity and they're going up and the reliability of electricity going down. Because, for example, they want to build, I think, all along the East Coast. I'm not sure if it's on the West Coast too, just this this gigantic array of windmills. Am I right about that? I believe.
Yes, it's slightly less far along on the West Coast, but yeah.
Yeah. And
it's Mark C. Jacobson's dream.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I think they need to be more concerned about firming what they already have.
This article is really annoying because, like, I despise all of these people and organizations, but, facts are facts, and they're completely right. This reconciliation, this law is going to increase energy prices and hurt their businesses. What drives me nuts about this is that it shows sort of the public brainwashing that renewables and good environmental policy are just bundled together. When, and that one automatically means the other, when this is just not true.
Yeah, everyone is being gamed. I mean, the very fact that we know that the renewables are destabilizing the energy markets.
Well, not just the markets, but the physical grid. Like, it's putting people in danger.
And the physical grid. Yeah. There are groups making ridiculous sums of money off of this because it's a lot easier to game unstable systems to maximize profit than it is to maximize profit off of stable systems.
Yes, absolutely. Very much so. For most of the history of electricity and during the entire regulated era, this is the current focus of my reading, is power companies were called widow and orphan stocks because they were the only ones who would waste their time investing in them. You know, you'd buy a few shares of a power company and it would give you pennies, you know, every few months forever. That's just, they made money and they kind of made money and that was it.
Yeah,
You know?
they make money predictably, they make money stably.
Yeah,
And there's not
it,
really
it wasn't something that you invested in. In fact, you couldn't invest in it because the power company owned everything. There was nothing to invest in. When they wanted a new power plant, they just built it out of pocket. And the natural demand of the market is what paid back whatever the costs were.
You know, you
Yeah,
said something interesting, and maybe you could elaborate on that. And you were talking about the regulations on nuclear being so prohibitive, and that being the reason why it takes so long for a nuclear plant to reach a point of profitability. If I'm paraphrasing correctly.
It's a foundational cause. There are other causes also. There are major issues, especially in the US, of basically institutional amnesia about how to build reactors on time and on budget. The regulatory issue comes in with the ratcheting when you've got situations like, for instance, where Vodal was required to add tsunami protection in the wake of Fukushima.
Yeah, if you're the high regulations are annoying, but one can cope with them. But when the regulations become a moving target,
Yeah,
that's when you're completely screwed.
Exactly, because
no other industry has to deal with that. Once you put a shovel in the ground, your books are sealed.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that is a problem.
No, it's great. So sort of related is we are still trying to renew the license for many nuclear plants. And so some good news finally, Dominion has asked for state approval to extend the life of nuclear plants beyond 2050. And so we've got, so this is in Virginia, and it's about $3.9 billion in costs. So they need to basically have a kind of a power purchase agreement with the state so that these plants will have a guaranteed rate of return through 2050. This sounds like a good deal to me if we can, spend quite a bit less than the infrastructure or reconciliation bills to keep this, was it 2 or 4 gigawatts, I bet, of nuclear energy online for that long, for another 20 years.
Remind me, was it Virginia or New Jersey that refused to give nuclear plants the same carbon credits as wind and solar?
I think I don't know what you're referring to, but I would guess Virginia, since everything I've heard from New Jersey is that they're taking good care of their nuclear plants.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
one of them. I'm one of the actually a few of the northeast states.
Several of the northeast states. Yeah. The Northeast is really hard on nuclear power plants.
I was going to say that.
Because that's one of the reasons why you see all these plants it's a contributing factor. Again, you've got renewables getting these low carbon credits where the nuclear plants don't.
Yeah, well, that's why Indian Point closed. New York squeaked through a law that gave credits to carbon-free sources, but it was written in such a way that the other Gina and the other 1 or 2 nuclear plants in New York got them, but Indian Point did not.
Well, they've been attacking, Riverkeeper and Cuomo have been attacking Indian Point for a very long time.
Indian Point is their favorite whipping boy.
Is it too late?
Yeah, Indian Point's closed. Holtec's already started.
It's impossible. Once the plans have been made to decommission a plant, even if it's still operating, it's practically impossible to get the NRC to give you permission to say, "Oh no, we're not actually going to do that."
And that's an example of the overarching regulatory burden for nuclear is, if you partially disassemble a coal or natural gas power plant and change your mind, you can just switch your demolition option to a construction option and nobody cares. But if you allow the license, the physical plant could be exactly perfect and you can prove it's exactly perfect. But if you allow the license of a nuclear power plant to expire, you never get it again. You must demolish the power plant. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, this is what Diablo Canyon is facing.
Yes,
Yeah.
if Diablo Canyon shuts down in 2024, 2025, it would take a change in federal law to reactivate it.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I think there's something behind this in the sense that I've checked. This is quite a number of years ago, but and I don't think it's true today, but it's practically true. Is that every politician has gotten a check from the fossil fuel industry?
Yes.
Last I checked.
Damn near everyone, yeah.
Damn
Yeah.
near, I mean, it's
Except for the 2 or 3 that don't check checks from anyone.
Yeah.
yeah, and some of them are anti.
Either directly or indirectly.
Most of them are anti-nuclear.
I mean, if they've gotten a check from Greenpeace or especially Greenpeace. But
Greenpeace is funded by natural gas.
Yeah, they sell natural gas.
They sell natural gas. Yes, that is
They actually
vegan.
they recently
it's vegan
changed.
natural gas. Don't forget, it's
Oh,
vegan
no,
natural gas.
only about 10% of it. Only about 10% of it is.
Less,
and they actually
I think.
recently changed the name of their website
Right.
because it used to be Greenpeace Energy. And they changed the name of the website now.
I caught it too. I caught it the day someone called it out. Let's see if I can find it.
That might have been me.
Yeah, but
That's
yeah.
pretty mind blowing. That's pretty mind blowing.
Yeah, when I found that website sometime last year, and I was like, I basically plastered it over every group that I'm a member of. I'm like, what is
I would like to get a link on that. That's
Yeah.
That's
So, did you know about that, Gabriel? About Greenpeace selling natural gas?
I saw something about it, but I didn't know that there was.
I
so
mentioned
upfront
it in the
about it.
previous
So,
meeting.
Yeah.
remember, it's a big, complicated corporate structure. But yeah, Greenpeace is the international NGO, and they have all their national NGOs. But they also own as a separate entity, but they own it, a for-profit utility in Germany that Greenpeace, the NGO, owns, and is also called Greenpeace, and it sells natural gas.
But you were saying it's veggie natural gas. What's
Well,
the
that's
story
what
with
that. No, it's not vegan. That's silly. Also, vegan is silly.
That's a
but-
sarcasm.
No. That's their marketing term. That's the brand name. That's what they call it, is vegan natural gas.
Something
Yeah,
different about
they
it?
changed the name of it to Green Planet Energy.
Oh.
And it
But
recently,
where does this gas come from? I mean, 'cause
Oh,
you
it's
can-
perfectly normal natural gas. They just market it as vegan. Like that's their term.
It's a brand name. That's it.
It's a brand name. It's a brand name. Yes, exactly.
From Russia.
It's like when people say, premium dial-up or something. What's premium about it? It's just a brand name.
Because I mean, you can get natural gas without digging. I mean, from mines, from sewerage,
It's none of that.
none of that. And
No.
I mean, in that case, that kind of natural gas is good to burn.
It's a small utility in Germany that is just the same as all the other utilities in Germany. They get their natural gas from an NG tanker and sell it to their customer, and then it turns the meter and they bill for it. But it's owned and operated by Greenpeace.
yeah, I just posted a link to them in the chat.
Oh, great. Yeah, here's the new
Pretty
one.
brazen, man. That's
put it
pretty
up.
Brazen.
I'll put it up
God.
on the screen.
Mind you, it's going to come up in German, so you might have to run it. You'll have to run it to Google Translate.
Oh yeah. Oh, and someone's trying to say hi to me in chat. Yes, Crunge Lord, that's me in the call. I'm
Oh,
here.
it still says Greenpeace Energy above the official name.
Yep.
That's amazing. I mean, the Sierra Club, they ran away from it. They were like, when they with Chesapeake gas, when that whole scandal. But the Greenpeace, they're just.
I don't think I don't think some of these NGOs have actually run away from it. I think they've found more creative ways to hide it.
I also think they've discovered that running a utility is really friggin' difficult, and they're better off just making money asking for donations as they always have. Why is that beeping?
I just took a photo shot of that.
Yeah. So
Hold it.
basic.
Drop-
So
drop it
from
down
what I
a little
re-
bit so I get a Photoshop.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Scroll
yeah.
down to the bottom where it literally says, 0%. They're aiming for not that far down, like the middle, like where it says 0% coal, 0% nuclear power, 100% conviction.
Oh wow, really?
Oh shit! Excuse my language. What the hell is conviction?
They are.
They should be convicted.
Do you guys all know the technical definition of chutzpah?
Yeah, well, that's I don't know the
What is it?
exact definition, but that definitely.
But you all know what chutzpah is, I assume.
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
What's,
do you know
what's
that the technical definition is when you murder your parents and ask for mercy from the judge because you're an orphan?
I like that.
And that's what I'm thinking about here.
They're such purists too. I mean, they're against GMOs and glyphosate.
Oh no, Greenpeace is against anything you need for civilization.
Yeah.
That's why I lump them into one big category of just misanthropes.
Everything except natural gas, if it's theirs.
Well, that's because it makes money. They will make
Yeah.
an exception for things that make them money. That's what Greenpeace is. Greenpeace is a perfect example about how it's just all about marketing, because they're one of the largest and most well-funded NGOs in the world. I mean, they're bigger than many countries, and a lot of countries consider them a threat to national security, and for good reason. They're so powerful. They're more powerful. They're more powerful than many of the giant corporations that they claim to be fighting against.
Look at what happened in Peru.
But people.
What happened in Peru?
Oh,
They vandalized the Nazca lines.
yeah, and nobody
oh,
said
yeah,
a thing.
That's right. That's right.
But people still think that Greenpeace is just 6 or 7 hippies on a boat fighting for the whales.
Yeah.
Like, it's all about optics, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, this is not your friendly neighborhood hippie. This is like the big evil hippie with an office and a mahogany table.
Oh my God, this is really what they did on the Nazca lines.
Yep.
Oh God,
Back all over the place to do it.
Yeah,
too.
no, and they trampled the lines, and the lines are only like a few millimeters thick, and they just put their big North Face boots into them.
Oh my God, that's desecration, man.
No, it is. It's one of
is.
the great archaeological things of just humanity, and Greenpeace doesn't give a shit.
God damn. Well, you know what? I bet you the people who did it thought they were doing that reminds me of the Taliban when they blew up the statues of the Buddhists.
Well, to be
Yeah.
fair, the Taliban was being deliberate.
Yeah, they were quite deliberate.
Yeah, well, I think that I get a feeling these people were too.
No, these people were negligent. There's a point where
Yeah.
there's a point where idiocy and malice become indistinguishable, and Greenpeace is
And
way
they're
past it.
co-opting. They tried to say that, oh, we're doing honor to this, and like, no, they're co-opting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're explicitly trying to use the native peoples in Peru to promote their NGO.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, I
literally
get
a branding
feeling-
exercise.
Yeah, I get a feeling they were drinking their own Kool-Aid, the people who did it, though.
Oh, they always drink. Oh no, I'm sure the people who did it are drinking their own Kool-Aid, but I'm also sure
Yeah,
that the people who
that's
sent
awesome.
them there aren't shedding a tear.
Yeah, well.
We're sorry we got caught.
Yes.
Yeah.
Though, how could you
Say,
not
Carl,
get caught? Hey, what's up, Chris?
Oh, I was thinking when at some point when there's a break or something, I'd be interested in seeing how you desecrated your T-shirt with printing.
Oh, well, let's do
Notice there's
that.
some printing on it.
So you can see this on the stream camera.
Gotta stand up. Turn a little bit. Yeah, there you go. Who is that late? Well,
This is for the. I'm
Okay.
using a different camera for the stream. Is right there. This is Lisa Meitner, and I did some research on Lisa Meitner for the time we were speaking in at the Pacific Science Center, and so I did some research on her, and oh my goodness, we just got a raid on Twitch from Dan Simpson. Is that we really got a raid? Thank you so much, Dan Simpson, for the raid. Welcome, Raiders. This is a special show. My name's Carl. On Twitch, I'm Your Environment Seattle. But I'm here with my good friends at the Ecomodernist Society of North America, and this is the Ecomodernist channel live. So we're here talking about COP26